Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're really grateful that you are here and taking the time out of your day to hop on to the first session of our three-part series. Give me just 1 second. My name is Caitlin Wally-Stoll, and I'm the Farm Business Management Specialist and Team Leader with Cornell Cooperative Extension Southwest New York Dairy, Livestock, and Field Crops team. I'm going to be presenting on the third session of this series, but I'm here today to kind of help kick some things off. First, I'm going to run through a few housekeeping things for those of you who haven't done a Zoom webinar with us before. This is set up as a webinar intentionally, so folks' videos aren't on as well as their mics, so you don't have to worry about sound or video coming through. Because of that, if you have any questions, comments, concerns as we go along, you do have access to two different things that you can use. At the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see a box that says chat. That's a little bit easier and user-friendly, so we encourage using that option. There's also a Q&A function that you can use too. I've got some helpers today in the background, so thank you for your patience. Along those lines, you do also have the option to turn on a transcript if for some reason your sound's not coming through, or if you want the transcript to show up. It's a live transcription, so sometimes some of the words don't carry through, but it can be helpful if you need access to that. Other things to mention, we will be recording this and we'll be sharing the recording out. And we also have created a central web page that will act as a platform to host all of the recordings, the resources, as well as our feedback survey. Our feedback survey will pop up at the end of tonight's session. You can use that to provide feedback on this session in particular, and we do read those and we'll adjust the rest of the series as we move forward. One thing that I wanted to show everybody before we get started with tonight's session is to walk through that central webpage that I had mentioned. So this link was included in the email that you got today and will be included in all of the follow-up emails that you'll receive. And this will be our housing landing station. So we've got 3 sessions coming up. Tonight's session, Tonight's session will cover building a strong management team. And we have got Mary Ellen Baldwin, Judy Wright, and Laura Biasillo will be on to help presenting. So after tonight's presentation, there'll be resources and the recording here. Next week, we'll talk about assessing your business with Nicole Tmell and Lynn Bliven. And session 3 on March 22nd will be tax management and succession planning with myself and Steve Hadcock. So again, this webpage will kind of act as a central landing page for all of our resources, recordings, and information moving forward. At the bottom of this webpage is everybody's contact information as well. So if you have any questions as we go along, you can contact whoever's closest to your region, and we will happily help you out as we can. If you have any tech issues tonight, if for some reason you get disconnected or are having problems with sound or video, feel free to call or text me, and I will put my cell phone number in the chat so that you have it. Okay, I think that was all of my spiel. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ellen Baldwin and Judy Wright, who will introduce themselves. They're part of the program team of Cornell Cooperative Extension specialists from across the state that have been working together to talk about this topic. As we go along, again, please drop any questions or comments that you have in the chat box and we'll address them as we go forward. So with that, Mary Ellen, if you are Judy, whoever, I'll turn it over to you guys. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Like Caitlin said, my name is Mary Ellen Baldwin. I'm the farm business manager in Oneida County, and I am going to start off we'll share my screen. We can get started tonight, and then Judy, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Judy Wright. I work with Cornell Cooperative Extension in Seneca County, and I'm actually my official title is Ag Economic Development, but I've had some experiences over my many years with cooperative extension and outside of cooperative extension, working with families as they think about succession planning, transitioning, that type of thing. So I'm really excited to be part of this dynamic team and look forward to interacting with everybody.
Great, thank you. So we'll get started. Like we said again, tonight we're going to be talking about building a strong management team. Here's some of the learning objectives. Building your team of professionals, staying on track with your facilitator, managing those uncomfortable conversations, and also how to manage those off-farm errors. So I'll get started with building your team of professionals. I think there was a poll. So when we talk about building our teams of professionals, we talk about the people that we are currently working with. So what stage are you currently in?
Sorry,
Succession planning?
Mary Ellen,
Don't worry.
with our tech issues, I didn't have enough time to put your poll in, but we do have the introductory poll, just trying to find out where folks are at in the process. I apologize. For that.
Thank you. Oh, no worries. So if you'd like to start here, we can get a kind of an idea of where you currently are in your succession planning.
Okay, now this poll's not going to work again. Let me try one thing.
Caitlin, on my screen, it says I can relaunch the poll.
Yep, it should have worked.
All right, it looks like it's working.
Okay, perfect. There we go. All right, so we'll give everybody a couple more seconds to kind of let us know where they're at in the succession planning process. And looks like we've got a good chunk, so I'll go ahead and share the results.
Great.
And looks like we're all across the board. So you guys have a captive audience.
Definitely looks like we're all across the board. It's great to see that some people have already started. They're here to get some questions answered. And then also it's great to see some of those people that are asking, what is succession planning? So we're glad that you joined and you're going to be a part of this series and over the next couple of weeks. So we'll get started building that professional team. Personally, when I think of building a professional team, it really is different for every operation. Some may want an attorney present, or their financial planner, their accountant, as well as maybe their insurance professional or bankers. It all really depends on how comfortable you are with those individuals and decide and what best fits your needs. So during this process, prior to selecting your team of professionals, it's really important to vet those professionals. So are they there for your needs? How do they behave when it comes to helping you and your family design your succession plan? What do they know? Have they worked previously with other operations? Are they comfortable with the topic? So there's just some things that as an educator, I felt were very important when it comes to choosing your team of professionals. Think about how they act professionally. Are they listening to you? Are they concerned about your family? Are they interested in your operation? One of the most important things that I also felt was, as a professional, we're here to assist. We're here to answer your questions. Things that are hard to talk about, using a professional may help you as a business dive into those deeper conversations. So when you think about your team of professionals, it really is broken down to who you feel is the best fit. Some things to remember when you're working with these professionals, they're working for you. So if you don't feel that your needs are being met, or if you feel uncomfortable when it comes to asking questions, it's important that you feel comfortable working with these professionals, as well as the other people within your operation. The other individuals that are working with you to develop the succession plan, whether that's your family, whether that's a partner in your business, choosing professionals isn't just up to one person. It's going to have to be the team of you. So when we talk about the facilitator, which Judy will cover, your facilitator might even be the person that's hosting these interviews with the individuals that you choose. The other thing, when it comes to choosing these professionals, if you have a good friendship, say with your accountant or with your banker, maybe a seed rep, someone that knows you, but also knows the individuals that you are working with, maybe using them isn't the best fit. If they know a deeper part of the family history, or if they would side with you on an argument, maybe having someone that's more neutral will be more beneficial in the long run when diving into these difficult conversations. Again, never feel intimidated by you are choosing this professional. This professional is part of the team that you feel best fits to help you start succession planning, help start these difficult conversations. Working with those individuals will help set you on track for the future and the continuation of your succession plan. So I'm going to pass the next slide on to Judy. Hopefully it moves. Oh, okay. Yep, staying on track with your facilitator.
Great. That's a great start, Mary Ellen. Thank you so much for getting us started. And what's interesting, having worked with families over the years, is some families can easily talk about what is coming up in the future, making the plans for it, and others are just not quite ready, never will be ready. So getting your team of professionals together is important, as is possibly considering getting someone to help facilitate these conversations, because for some people it's just not easy. You're talking about perhaps the end of a business in some person's eyes, because it's going out of their control or has the potential to. Also, a facilitator can help with some difficult conversations, as we said. So we usually try to help people think sometimes about, who a facilitator is, and thinking about selecting them. So one of the questions that you might want to ask yourself as you're starting this conversation, especially if you're in the early stages of planning, is what are some of the circumstances that might require bringing a facilitator in? And again, emotionally charged decisions for some people is going to require some help to get those conversations started. And unfortunately, not all families communicate well together. So having that facilitator that can, again, facilitate or moderate those conversations is critical. The role that they may play, they can act as a moderator, facilitator. They should be able to help identify some professionals. If you get stuck somewhere in the conversation, that would be important, because again, what the process that you're starting or are currently on is not something that's going to happen in 1 or 2 meetings. It's going to take quite a bit of time. I have talked to families that have worked at this from beginning to end with starts and stops over a period of several years before they finally got to where they thought they needed to be. So again, having that person to encourage you along is really important, almost as a cheerleader. And then what can you expect? You can encourage people to participate again, and some people that you might want to consider for a moderator, if they're not already part of the team, might be an accountant, assuming they're not, in Mary Ellen's example, as being a close friend, perhaps a farm advisor, someone you've been working with for quite a while that understands what's kind of going on in the farm but isn't immediately involved in it. Sometimes extension educators may be a little bit on this, assuming that it's a pretty smooth operation. A trusted friend, might be someone to bring in, as well as FarmNet. If anybody hasn't looked at FarmNet recently, they have some excellent resources there and sometimes are available to help in this capacity. So again, it's really up to you in the process that you are undertaking to help move it along, but don't feel that it has to be all on your shoulders. Look for a facilitator or a moderator to help move that conversation through. I think I've said all I wanted to about that one, Mary Ellen, so we can move on to the next slide, which is thinking about setting some SMART goals and delegating actions. So again, this is a long process, or has the potential to be a long process, and setting goals is really important to move this process forward, because you don't want to be 5 years down the road and still in that early stage of, oh, we're still thinking about doing this. And again, this is where a moderator, a facilitator can help set some of those goals. So it's important to have both short-term and long-term goals. And I believe, and I hope everybody else believes the same as I do, that setting goals is more or less like a roadmap. It's going to tell you how to get to where you want to be in the long run. So you're going to have both short-term and long-term goals. And it's important to set these because they will lead to success. Sometimes it takes a little while to get there than you thought it would, but that's okay. The journey is part of the adventure. We like to talk a lot about SMART goals, and the SMART goals are specific, they're measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed. So all those come together to be SMART. And as we look at these goals, we're looking at those of the individual family members or people who are part of this farm business. We're looking at our family goals together. Hopefully we've been talking about those. And then again, where is this farm business? What is its overall goal? What's its mission statement? So thinking about SMART goals, you really do want to think of them as a SMART goal where it's specific. So in this case, you want to be specific about what you want to have done, and thinking about where you want to go in getting your succession plan underway is one way to do it. So how are you going to, what are the steps you're going to take to get there? So that would be some of this being specific. Then the measurable part is how do you know that you're actually getting there? So you might have a specific goal, and then you'll want to say, we're going to know that we've gotten there because we've gotten our accountant to give us all of the information we need to make a decision. You want them to be achievable. So you don't want something so lofty and pie in the sky that you'll never get there. So something that's achievable will be critical, as well as it being relevant or realistic, so that you're able to make those milestones and have it be relatively realistic. Timed is, I think, important, because if we don't put what I'll call a deadline that we're going to achieve these things, then again, this is where you can get many years down the road and still not get to where you are. And again, this is where sharing this with a facilitator or moderator will help move that process forward. Also, in the conversations of setting these, you want to set some action steps. Action steps are important, and they have accountability. So if if I'm sitting around the table as a family member and we've decided that we're going to do 5 or 6 things at a meeting, and then we're going to go ahead and meet in another month to see where we are, we're going to assign certain tasks. And my task might be to reach out to the accountant to get information that we need. And I have agreed that I will do it. My name is actually assigned to that task. And there will be a deadline, a timeline that I'll need to have that done by. Ideally, that would be available and shared with the rest of the farm business members who are part of the moving forward with the succession plan ahead of time, so that people have the opportunity to look at the information, digest it, and then come to the table the next meeting prepared to make decisions or to follow what the next step is. So again, it's really important through this process, perhaps with the help of a facilitator or moderator, to set some goals to keep the process moving, thinking about the SMART goals where they are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed, having action steps with people assigned who will follow through and get the job done in order to make the process happen. So I think that then leads us, Mary Ellen, into talking about meetings.
Yep, and in those meetings, you're gonna have to manage some uncomfortable conversations. So like Judy said, setting goals for yourself, a goal for yourself might be having that person that's starting the conversation. Think about the reasons as to why their conversation hasn't been had, why it's been avoided. Maybe there's been a story of a past transition and how it didn't go so well. Was it negative? Did it cause hardships? Did it cause family trouble? Was the topic of succession planning just something that was negative? So think about it as the past generation. How was that transition? Was it successful, or was it something that was completely avoided until last minute when it had to happen? Is it a procrastination on the new generation, and is it a procrastination on the older generation? So again, who's going to start that conversation? Who's going to step up to bat and realize the conversation needs to be had? And then often it's really being scared of conflict. No one wants to be involved in conflict. Conflict is definitely something that people shy away from, especially when it comes to this topic. So having that difficult conversation, having it uncomfortable. It's not guaranteed that you're going to be able to avoid the uncomfortable conversation, but there's definitely some solutions that can provide you kind of like an easement into having those difficult conversations. So maybe that's working with your facilitator or working with your moderator to schedule a time or date at in a location where everyone feels comfortable to start the conversation. And with that facilitator, it's really important that everyone has the opportunity to speak with the facilitator beforehand, talking about their needs, figuring out what is the future of the business, what you as an individual wants for the business, but also for the successors and what they want for the business. And having that prior conversation prior to going into the meeting can help maybe reduce some personal anxiety or fear about the conflict that could arise. Exploring the connection between the conflict and how you can prevent it, how you can make that change. So again, identify the solutions to make sure all parties that are involved are comfortable. That's definitely going to be a big step when you go to sit down to talk about this. Again, it's not something that everyone is comfortable about talking about. And again, and then everyone does have their right to their emotions. If you're talking with an older generation who has identified themselves by this farm, by the operation that they've owned for these years, it's how they identify themselves. So maybe losing that identity was part of the hurdle as to why they never wanted to start the conversation. So having the ability to acknowledge that everyone's emotions are valid, whether that's through someone having severe anxiety about the conversation, someone having anger, and then again, like the overall sadness of maybe aging out of the operation, not having the ability to do what you have done for the last 60 years. So as each generation, it's so important that we're showing empathy as we start to work on this succession planning. And then also incorporating those 5 C's of communication. Be clear, communicate exactly what you want, communicate the direct issue at hand. It's going to be difficult, but that's truly the only way that you're going to be able to continue on to create the successful succession plan. Be conscious. The way that you speak to others may come off as harsh, vice versa. Being conscious of how you're speaking, keeping it simple. If others have questions, being able to address them, being open to those concerns. And then being curious, asking the questions. Why are you concerned? How can we prevent this conversation being negative with the next generation? And then be compassionate. Again, showing the older generation or the younger generation that we believe in you. We understand the hurdles that you might face down the road, but here's some ways that we can work together to face those hurdles. And then remember, all parties are involved. This is a difficult conversation. And showing empathy and reassuring others that there's opportunity to create a solution. And then so how to manage those off-farm heirs. Go ahead, Judy.
This always seems to come up.
And this might be part of your difficult conversation.
Inevitably, I'm sure it probably is. So, yeah, it the conversations I've been in over the years, this always is like, it is always, almost always the sticking point, which is fair. You kind of wonder, how everybody's going to perceive it, but unless you start talking about it and thinking about it, it will always be the elephant in the room. So it's important to talk about, what are the expectations? What is it that people are thinking about? Just if you have, well, the example I'll always give is son stays home, works on the farm, and the other 3 children have all gone off, have their own careers, are completely independent of the farm. What are all 4 siblings thinking about? Chances might be, unfortunately, that they've not talked about it. Whereas the son who has stayed home figures, yep, I'm going to be getting everything. I've spent my time here. I've invested in it. I run the farm. I help dad. I do everything. I get the farm. And then something happens, and all of a sudden somebody from a different state, a sibling from different state comes in, and all of a sudden they think, okay, here's my chance. I'm going to run the farm now. So there's, who knows what the expectations are. So it's important to start that conversation to make sure. I've also seen where I go back to the same example, not to pick on sons, but son stays home, the other 3 are off, and it's time to move the farm along. And the son says, I'm done. I've had enough. I'm not working on it. And the other kids that are gone, the other siblings that are off, say, I don't want anything to do with it either. So it's important to have those conversations and what the expectations are. I always like to caution people, even though it may be that everybody's home over Thanksgiving, that's probably not the best time to have that conversation, because it can be a little emotionally charged, but find some time have those conversations when you can get everybody around. Maybe it's at a summer picnic or whatever, when you can get everybody pulled together. So figuring out what expectations are, at least it's out on the table, and then you can move forward with that. The other part that comes up is, what is equal or equitable? Of course, equal comes when everybody, and everybody's going to get an equal amount. And I saw a difficult situation where dad died unexpectedly on the farm. It was a big dairy farm. And 2 sons were working on the farm, and then there were 2 sisters that were away. And sure enough, there weren't the appropriate documents in place, and the kids came back, and everybody wanted equal. And it was very difficult. They ended up having to sell some land for houses that they didn't really want to do, but in order to satisfy what was going on, that's what they ended up doing. So be thinking about that. Equal is where everybody's going to get the same regardless of the need or situation. So if you have somebody who has been off the farm for a number of years, and this is another true situation I ran into. They had been off the farm and had set up and established their own business, which was quite successful. Unbelievably, they really wanted an equal part of that farm, and the farm had to be sold to satisfy that. So again, I'm giving you the horror stories behind this, but I think it's some reality that we need to be thinking about as you start in on this process. Again, thinking about equal, people use a pie example. And so this is where the estate would be the pie, and it gets distributed equally. And if you have 4 children, everybody gets a quarter piece of the pie, regardless of whether they've been invested in the farm or they've been off and away. There is a difference between leaving an equal inheritance where each child receives the same amount, and what's called an equitable inheritance where each child receives what's fair given their current circumstances. So you need to think about that. And it can be a difficult conversation, but I think it's one that should be had so that everybody knows going into either a succession plan and getting it formulated, so that if something untimely should happen, there are going to be minimal surprises along the way. Again, the question is, on your farm, do you have children who have stayed on the farm? And what's happened with those that haven't remained on the farm? Another question is, how will your decisions that you make impact the future of the farm? What will the farm successor have to do? So in other words, if you make a decision today, how's that going to have implications down the road? I'm sure we've all heard the term unintended consequences. The decision you make today may have some challenges for the successor down the road. Somebody said to me, gee, I don't know if I want to really farm, if I'm in partnership with my brother and he should pass away, I don't know that I really want to farm with his wife. So that could be a reality too. So you have to be kind of thinking about some of the bigger connections around as well. And again, this is where working with skilled professionals who've been through this process with other over time can help you think of some of these extenuating circumstances. Also, setting up what's called a buy-sell agreement might be an option to think about. And these are often used when you have unrelated partners but it can also be useful as a tool for family businesses. So what that does is it helps to think about, and actually the agreement itself will address what happens when some common events happen. And these events can be the death of a partner, the disability of a partner, retirement of a partner, or a voluntary exit of a partner. So it just kind of sets in motion what happens when any of those circumstances could occur, because eventually over time something will. I mean, heaven forbid we don't want an unexpected death in our family, but it can happen. And we certainly wouldn't want anybody to have any type of permanent disability or long-term disability where they weren't able to fulfill their position on the farm. That did happen to one of my farmers a number of years ago. He had a huge round bale fall on him, broke his back, and he was basically unavailable to do anything for months. And it all fell to his wife and his father to keep the farm going, and they had small children. So those are things happen. Hopefully the retirement of a partner is planned for, but sometimes people are like, I'm out, I've had enough. And then if you do have someone who needs to exit the business quickly. So those are also things that a buy-sell agreement can help put in place pieces so that you're ready to make those decisions. And it will help to address how the remaining partner can value what is there as to whether or not they need to buy out the exiting partner. If there's anything, what am I trying to say? If a partner were to leave earlier than planned, is there some type of discounting because all of a sudden, oh my gosh, we don't have the cash flow. We just made a major purchase and you didn't tell me you were going to leave, and now I'm cash strapped to get you out. And then also in a buy-sell agreement, you can lay out the terms of payment to the exiting partner. It can talk about how it's going to be paid over a number of years, what the interest rate might be. Interest rates are critical right now. And how frequently would the payment be made? Would it be made on an annual basis or a monthly basis? Those are all things that can be put in place so that there hopefully won't be too many surprises. Also, buy-sell agreements will go a long way in helping preserve what they're calling family harmony and communication. So it can put a lot in place. It should be available to everybody so that they understand what is going to happen when something, one of those 4 triggering events could occur. And also, again, the communication is there, and there shouldn't be any major surprises. Sometimes you can end up with a few like, oh my goodness, I hadn't considered that, but it shouldn't be a major one. So in summary, as far as buy-sell agreements, I think they're worth considering, especially when it comes to trying to keep family communications open, and especially over Thanksgiving dinner. We certainly don't want to disrupt those family dinners. So, Mary Ellen, we seem to have gone through that pretty darn quickly.
I know, it was pretty quick.
But I guess what I was going to suggest is if people have questions, to go ahead and put them in the question part. And it's never too early to start these conversations. There's a lot of resources, and just to try and get started I think getting started is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, definitely just starting out by having that conversation, definitely is the hardest part for most of the farmers that I'm working with, and then as well as on a personal level. So having that conversation might be the starting point, and working with that facilitator, finding someone who fits the needs of you individually and then the partners that you're working with.
Great. So at this point, if anybody has any questions for Mary Ellen or Judy on the topics that they talked about tonight, please feel free to put those in the chat. While we do still have some time tonight. So I put together a list of some resources and I thought we could use that time to go through them. And let me just go ahead and share my screen. The first one isn't a resource, but it's a hysterically funny meme that myself and Nicole Tamel saw come up on Facebook a couple months ago. And for anybody who, I don't know, for anybody who does the social media and soul suck and spends time there, this makes me laugh. So it's a picture of two pictures. One says, in reference to the queen passing away, 96-year-old queen dies and 73-year-old son takes over. And the other picture says ag succession planning. And it says corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. And the answer is that they're the same picture, right? So it's a joke, but it's meant to be a joke in good spirit. So sometimes we unfortunately get into positions where succession planning is one of those like yucky things that we don't want to talk about. We'd much rather milk cows and plant things in the soil and be out in the sunshine and avoid these tough conversations. And all of us have worked with farms and have farm friends who have gotten put in this position where you put off succession planning for way too long and it turns into an even bigger thing. And we hope that through your participation in this series, we're providing resources and an introduction to the topic that you can then use to hopefully avoid getting in this position. Because what can happen when you're forced into succession planning and you haven't laid the foundation for that, it can mean the end of the business. It can mean the end of healthy relationships on the farm, and it can bring a lot of things that we really want to avoid. So we're appreciative of everybody being interested in the topic. So a couple of other resources that I just wanted to bring up. And again, if you have questions for Judy and Mary Ellen, please drop those in the chat and we'll spend time going through those. But a few resources that were mentioned that I just wanted to spend the time to show. The first is New York FarmNet. New York FarmNet, for those of you who haven't worked with FarmNet before, it's 100% free. It's 100% confidential. And they provide services. Actually, is my screen showing okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. They provide consultation services, and they have two different kinds of consultants. One is a farm business consultant, so similar to the team of us that are bringing this, focusing on farm finances, the paperwork part of farming. But then they also have family consultants, which are really great. They're licensed social workers that have backgrounds in ag, and they're able to provide just in touch emotional support, mental health support, and just serving as a moderator who is a little bit more in tune to the emotions that come along with these conversations. And again, their services are completely confidential and completely free. And if you call this phone number, 1-800-547-3276, you'll get a call back within a day or two, and somebody will be setting up a time to come to your farm. I've worked with farms before where we've brought in FarmNet, particularly the family consultants, and the family consultants met with each person that's been involved in the succession planning conversations to help draw those support. The other cool thing that FarmNet has just put out is a website that's entirely dedicated to succession planning. So you can get to it through their main website, and it has a lot of different resources, fact sheets, and just kind of things to think about when it comes to succession planning. One of my favorite things that they have on here, though, are actual guides that you can print out and go through. And you can call them and they can mail you pre-printed guides too. And I just found it and now I'm not going to find it again. There we go. So there are 2 different guides and for succession planning, business transfer planning. And the first one is for the senior generation. And then there's actually this entirely separate guide for the junior generation, which I think is really cool to acknowledge that we're going to come at this from different perspectives, right? So I'll just open this up quick. Let me zoom in on here so you can see it. Again, these are all completely free, available online, and we'll link this back in the resources that will be on our website. So let me go. This is like a fillable worksheet, or I'm pointing at my screen like you guys can see it and you can't actually see me. You can't see me pointing, so we're on a roll. This is a fillable workbook, so you can actually print this out, set it on your kitchen table, and go through it with your farm team. Each section has a little bit of information about that topic and then gives you like activities or places that you can write things down as it pertains to your farm in particular. It also gives several different strategies for managing farm succession planning, and it's written in a way, like, for me, it's written in a way that actually makes sense, which I genuinely appreciate, because I feel like most farm succession planning resources are written for a tax preparer and I don't understand it. So I really appreciate this resource immensely. And at the end of every section, there's usually like some type of a checklist of, okay, here's what you actually need to do, which I find really helpful. So again, this will be linked in your resources. And this is the business transfer guide from FarmNet, and there's a senior generation and a junior generation. They talk about a lot of the same topics, but the language is different and what's presented is a little bit different. And again, I think it's really important to just honor the fact that people are coming at this from different perspectives. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is, as Judy and Mary Ellen mentioned, when you're searching for a mediator or somebody to serve on your farm succession advisory team, you can reach out to Cooperative Extension. And if the 6 or 7 of us that are on the program team aren't in your area, we do have a listing. It has to get updated, but we have a listing of farm business management professionals across the state. So if you need help with finding who's the right person for you from Cornell Cooperative Extension, we can help you connect with that person. And CCE services are also free and confidential. So it's helpful to have kind of an unbiased person that's there. And if you have a really good relationship with your farm business management specialist that's in your county or in your region, we can, coordinate getting somebody else that might be a little bit more unbiased and not have known your kids since they were 4-H age, right? So the next thing that I wanted to mention is for our dairy producers that are on the webinar, there is funding to help pay for putting together an advisory team. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the program, and again, this is specific for dairy farmers. So if you have a dairy farm, you can apply for funds from the Dairy Advancement Program. And one of the things that they do is advisory teams. So if you want to put together an advisory team that includes paid professionals, so an accountant, a vet, nutritionist, whoever makes the most sense to come in on that team, this program can provide cost share funds of 80% to pay for those professionals to be there. The other thing that they do too is that they will help fund business planning. So a farm succession plan is a business plan. So I work with several farms that have used Dairy Advancement Program funds to pay to put together a farm succession plan and pay for a professional from Farm Credit, from another ag consultant service to help analyze the farm's current financials and put together an actual succession plan. They can also help prepare plans that, for example, when you're looking to loop in a lawyer, depending on the consultant that you work with, they can prepare a plan that you can take directly to the lawyer, which can cut down on the legal fees that you're paying because they're not trying to draw up all of that paperwork by themselves. And if you have any questions about the Dairy Advancement Program, all of us have worked with this, and we can help connect you with that and help you get your application in for those funds. The next thing that I wanted to mention is Judy and Mary Ellen talked about, some of those tougher conversations that we can have, and some of those like horror stories of, communication's really tough on family-run businesses. There is a program in New York State that's, again, free and confidential, the New York State Agricultural Mediation Program. You have access to this, and they're trained mediators who are all set for handling those tough conversations, right? And can come in. This is typically you're past a situation that can be handled by one of us or by FarmNet, and maybe there's some stronger feelings involved. But I've worked with farms where we've brought them in and they've been extremely helpful. And it's really helpful to have somebody that can come in with a clear mind, that doesn't know the family for the past 200 years, and knows how to manage these really hard conversations. So again, this is free and confidential, and we'll include the link to their website. And then a couple more resources that we wanted to point out. This is the MSU Designing Your Farm Succession Plan. We're providing you with a bunch of different options so that you can find the one that fits your learning style, your personality best. So if there's too many colors on the FarmNet one, no problem. We can find you one that doesn't have as many colors. So whatever fits your personality best. There's so many resources out there, and we're just here to Google them for you, right? And help screen them for the one that's going to fit your needs. So this is from Michigan State University, and they actually have curriculum recordings, presentations from previous succession and estate planning topics that they've done. So here's recordings of all of their workshop presentations and handouts, beginning estate planning publications. Most of these are in PDFs. Other estate planning publications, farm business transfer topics, and other links to additional resources. So all of the things, right? All of the things. And I know that I go to this as somebody that's trying to help others. And I think that they have a lot of some of the finer tuned topics that we're not going to have enough time to get through for this 3-part series. And even if it's, for example, if you are headed to talk to your legal counsel and you just want to know which words to use, right? I think it's really helpful to read through some of these, and it is kind of like an empowering feeling to know, I know what this word means, I know what I need to ask for. So this again will be linked, and it's a really great list of all of the things. So, and then finally, there is a publication that has been redesigned for different cooperative extension organizations across the country. This one in particular is branded as Virginia Cooperative Extension, but you'll find options that go through the same topics. So it's very similar to what the one from FarmNet was, but it's written in a different tone of voice, has some different resources throughout it. So you might identify with this a little bit better, and that's okay too. And so we will link back to this. But it's similar to FarmNet in the fact that it's a workbook. So it's meant to be printed, meant to get put on the kitchen table, and meant to be something that you can work through. I know when I'm working with farms on succession planning, we kind of identify which workbook or which resource is going to fit their personalities the best. And then we actually print out enough copies so everybody goes through it on their own. And then we come together as a team and go through it together. So I think giving people space to reflect and to think on their own, away from everybody's personalities, right? Away from grandma's kitchen table, and have time on their own to go through it. But then everybody's done their homework. So they've had a chance and quiet time to come up with their answers, so that then when it comes time to sit down as a family and go through some of these questions, for somebody who might be a little more socially anxious or shy naturally, they have something written down that they can read off from. And the workbooks follow the same for everybody. So I can say, okay, let's turn to page 24. What did you guys think about X, Y, and Z? So I find that really helpful. So again, all of these links will be listed on the webpage. And now I lost there we go. And to close off my long spiel of other resources to think about, we have this meme because my love language is memes, right? So succession plan, to do list, it says, and nothing is crossed out. And then it says we nailed it. So our hope is that after all of you go through this series, your succession plan to-do list doesn't say nothing anymore. And you've got a solid plan for how to move forward in a way that fits your needs the best. With that being said, we will leave the webinar open for a couple of minutes in case folks have any questions that they want to ask. You'll receive a copy of this recording and an updated link with all of the resources, as well as Mary Ellen and Judy's presentation. You'll receive that either tonight or tomorrow, depending on how much time my kids give me. So, you never know. But if you have any questions at this point, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And if you want to hop off, you can do that too. And thank you for joining us. We'll see everybody next week when we'll be hearing from Lynn Bliven and Nicole Tamel. So, Judy,
Caitlin,
yep.
I did see a question in the chat.
Perfect.
So since I'm here and I'm open, I will ask the question to our presenters. Do you have advice for transferring to a non-family member?
Yes. Get them in, get them involved in the conversation. And I guess the question I would ask too is, are there other family members that are going to be part of the farm? That's always, it can be a difficult conversation, but farm, sometimes transferring to a non-farm family member or to a non-family member, the farm may be a little easier because you don't have that family history going on. I did work with a farmer several years ago, and it was finally after the third non-family member, because she had no heirs, that she did find a good match. But it took her almost 15 years of, thinking she had the right person, having them come in and come to find out they weren't the right person, and then they left and she had to start all over again. So I guess my advice is work to try and find it. It's never to find that person. It's never too early to get started. It's all I can ever say to people. I'll just share one more story and then I'll let Mary Ellen talk. My husband started a small business 25 years ago. And we went and we sat down with the accountant, and her question to me the first year of the business was, well, it was actually to my husband, was, okay, how are you going to get rid of the business? And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, we barely even made a profit this year. And now you're asking us how we're going to get rid of the business. But that started us thinking. So sure enough, about within 20 years, my husband said, okay, time to move this along. And we had our plan in place. So it works. You just have to start that conversation. Sorry, Mary Ellen.
Oh,
I'll let you add 2 more cents.
No, I agree. I think there's opportunity, whether you're not a family member or if you're a partner on the existing operation. We just actually had this discussion with our young farmers group. There's a lot of interest within our community, but they don't have a farm family. Like, they're not from a farm family, but they're working on a farm. They've worked on a farm since they've got out of college, 10, 15 years. Maybe it's time to start a conversation with the partners, the existing owners, and figure out a way how you can become a partner on that farm, creating a partnership agreement where you are now a % owner and you're earning equity into the business. I think it's a conversation that should be had, and it's definitely an opportunity for those kids or for those young adults that didn't grow up on a farm, but their passion's agriculture, they're working on farms. There's opportunity. I know we just had, like I just said, we had our young farmers discussion group, and that was a hot topic, and that was a conversation. And I guess I got a phone call from someone the next day who approached his farm owner or his employer, and they're talking about it now. So they realize that they might not have a generation. Their next generation might not be interested in coming home to the farm, but they have employees that have dedicated their lives to their operation, and they see the value and they see the future. And they see the future in the hands of these non-farm family members. So there's definitely opportunity. And again, it's just having that conversation.
I would also add too, I used to have a guide that was specific for non-traditional farm transfers, and I can't find it, but I'll look, keep digging for it. There is a program in New York State. If you own a farm and you can't identify a successor, a family member that wants to take it over, we do have a program through American Farmland Trust, Farmland for a New Generation, and it can act as a listing service. So I'm working right now with 2 dairy farms that sold their cows and are now, operating as land or crop producers for one. The other one has beef, and kids don't want to come home to the farm, but they also don't want to see the farm sitting idle. So you can use the Farmland for a New Generation site as an opportunity to list your farm that you have available, and farm seekers can go to the site and search for farms by traits, by different qualities, by location, and it's kind of like a matchmaking service. And we have several success stories from this website, and it's people that you never would have come across in your typical day-to-day life, but it's giving an opportunity to a beginning farmer and is a free tool that you can use to help recruit the next generation, even if it's not a family member. Yep, Nicole just put the link to Farmland Finder on the website too, or on the chat box, excuse me. So that's a really cool opportunity if you are looking for a non-family successor and don't have anybody identified at this time.
I worked with not directly, but I worked with a farm, a large dairy farm, and they thought their son, who was one of the ones who stayed home, everybody else left. He came to realize that he liked working on the farm, but he did not want to be the manager, the owner, that type of thing. And so when that was made aware to mom and dad actually went to their lender, and the lender just so happened to be aware of another family who was very much interested in buying in and taking over a large dairy farm. And so they got matched up, and knock on wood, it worked well. The transition had its bumps. Even after that new family was identified, it took about 5 years for that whole transition to happen. So don't forget lenders as well.
Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any additional questions. I did just put the link to the feedback survey in the chat. So if you fill that out tonight, we will use that information to plan session 2 and session 3. You'll be receiving a follow-up email from me. If you have any questions that you didn't want to ask in this public space, please feel free to email any of us directly, and we'll help connect you with resources or help to answer your question. Any other comments from any of our other panelists or from Judy or Mary Ellen before we log off for the night? All right.
I just want to say thank you to Mary Ellen for pulling our presentation together. She did a great job. Thank you.
And thank you to Caitlin for being our tech wizard. We really appreciate it. Providing all those resources and again, all the additional support. So thank you.
Yes, well, thank you, Judy. Thank you, Mary Ellen, for presenting. Lynn and Nicole, we're looking forward to hearing from you guys next week. And thank you, everybody, for sharing your evening with us so that hopefully we can avoid the 96-year-old queen, 78-year-old son taking over situation, right? That's our actual goal with this series.
Yeah. So don't be scared of those conversations.
Yes.
They have to be had.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing your time, and we'll see you all next week.
Good night.
Take care.